Welcome to the Mad Love Your Life show. I'm Mary D, the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show. Hello, everyone. I am just returning from an epic trip to Alaska, and I want to thank my partners at Visit Anchorage for all of their hospitality and for showcasing everything that Alaska has to offer. My experiences included boating through a glacier-filled canyon, kayaking through a glacier-filled canyon, as well as taking a beautiful helicopter ride on Alpine Air, where my favorite pilot, Micah, took us over a 22-mile glacier and then proceeded to land on it. He put little spiky things on the bottom of my boots and let me walk around. He took his hand and scooped up some of that fresh glacier water, and it was one of the most beautiful scenarios and sceneries that I have seen in a very long time. It was literally a picture everywhere. And I experienced lots of wildlife. When they tell you not to run from a black bear, they aren't kidding. I got to watch one actually scale a fence. He was incredibly fast and agile. I was also informed that this bear had just come from the local bakery, where he proceeded to eat all of the cinnamon rolls that were on a cart, getting ready to go into the oven. So in these cases, we don't really blame the bear. We blame the humans because they left their door open, and that's just not something that you do, especially in Alaska. I got to experience sea otters, and y'all, they're literally floating out on the water on their back. They look super chill. They literally have this move going on. And because they have a volume of something like 1 million pieces of fur per cubic inch, they have the best wetsuit on the planet. They're like one of the few mammals that don't need blubber to keep themselves warm. So those were amazing. I also got to go to the wildlife sanctuary and hand feed a moose, also hand feed a porcupine. I learned a fun fact about porcupines, which I don't know if you know this, but I was 47 when I learned this, which is that porcupines don't actually like shoot their quills. That's, I don't know, some bad information we got from maybe a cartoon as a kid or something. Apparently, it's only if you touch them. So you don't touch them, and then you don't have to worry about getting quilled. So that's the deal on porcupines. Also, I got to hide fruit all over a bear enclosure and watch as the bear went on a little scavenger hunt to find his treats. I also went on a bunch of epic hikes, saw tons of waterfalls, and I even went gold panning. And I know you're wondering, Mary, did you strike gold? Well, I did, though it's certainly not even close to an ounce, probably not even a tenth of an ounce, just a few flakes suspended in a tiny jar of water. But hey, if they want to, if I want to become a mountain woman, then I feel like I've passed Mountaineering 101. So if you have a group retreat or you'd love to just tackle Alaska yourself, my team would be happy to get you hooked up with the right vendors and activities. I feel like I had the best of the best. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'll also be posting my reel of the trip on Instagram later today. And if you look under the adventures tab, you're going to see some highlights from my stories from last week over there on Instagram at @themaryd. And on the horizon, I will be bringing you some more travel adventures from New York, Florida, Lake Tahoe, Rancho Santa Fe, and Las Vegas over the next month. So it's a lot of travel packed into a very small amount of time. So feel free to add me on Instagram, and you can share in on the fun and the activities. And that's, again, at @themaryd. I also want to say thank you to those of you who have subscribed to my YouTube channel at the Mad Love Your Life show, because we just passed 1,000 subscribers. And that lets me know that you like the content. So we're going to keep this train moving. YouTube is something I did new this year, just wanting to see if that was another outlet that would feel good on top of, Apple and Spotify, and of course here on Bold Brave TV. My intention with each and every episode is to spark joy for you, inspiration, and to also help you maximize your humaning experience. And y'all know how much I love relationships, romantic, friendly, work, family, you name it. If it's about me and another person to make that me a we, then I'm in. And for those of you that aren't as familiar with me yet, in a nutshell, I'm a long term relationship kind of girl. I like relationships that can go deep and stick around a while. I have friendships that are rich in quality and have lasted since I was a little girl. And I'm single now, but I was married for 14 years and in the relationship for a total of 18 years. I don't consider that relationship a failure since we're not together anymore, but it certainly was full of lessons. And I also believe that some things aren't always meant to last forever. I also think it's a gift if we get to go through this life and love more than once. I think it's really special if we get to learn to love ourselves through the process. I'm also more interested in the quality of a relationship over the quantity of a relationship. And I think one of the benefits of being single now is that I get an opportunity to try to do things in a new and improved way so that I don't have to repeat any of the painful relationship hiccups of the past. And I know you might be feeling that way too. Or you're in a relationship right now and you feel like maybe things are stagnant or maybe things could be different. Or as I'm saying this, you might be able to reflect on your relationship and say, wow, like you feel really good and positive and you feel like your relationship is exactly where it should be and needs to be and that it feels right. And if that's you, then kudos, because relationships do take some work. And at the end of the day, I believe that there is definitely someone for everyone. So today I'm going to cover 5 things that I wish I knew before I ever got into a long-term relationship. So number 5, we'll start and go backwards, is be curious about your partner, which means you're going to ask better questions. And this should be a never ending exploration that you do with your person, right? So this is a way for you to stay curious together. Stay curious because it keeps things interesting. You've heard the term that couples who pray together stay together, but I want to challenge that and say that couples who play together stay together. And if there's one common theme that I see amongst relationships that don't last, it's that often things become mundane or too routine. And they forget to put their relationship first. Typically, kids creep in there somewhere. And when that happens, life shifts. Life shifts. And so, how can we still keep each other as a priority even when you're going through the shifts of life? One of the best pieces of advice I've ever received was that every year you should have something you do that is basically bucket list worthy. So that's something really big and memorable that you do every single year. And I would take that a step further and say that you should have something big and memorable you do every year with your person. Go jump out of an airplane together. Go jump off of a cliff into some beautiful blue water together. Go take a dancing lesson together. Do something slightly challenging together because it's in those moments that you really get to grow. And even while you're dating, it's an opportunity to try something challenging together, like kayaking for 2 or busting out of an escape room together. Nothing shows you who 2 people are more than watching those 2 people when they are under pressure. You get to see if they come out as a diamond or ashes. Number 4 would be create ground rules for fighting and respect the rules that you create together. Once in a while, you'll run into that odd couple who just doesn't fight, and kudos to them. But for the rest of us, disagreements are inevitable. We're human. We all have our own opinions, our own value systems, our own moments of being hangry. And for the record, it is absolutely okay to disagree. It's totally okay to have a completely different opinion about whether, pineapple should go on pizza or not. Or maybe you want to take it a step further and, it's who should win the next presidential election. But what's not okay is pressing each other's buttons in a way that's not playful or gaslighting or being defamatory and going for that really low blow. And chances are you know your person so well that you also know what scathing things you could say that would send them down a terrible spiral. Chances are also that once you do that, you'll end up regretting what you said because you hit them below the belt. So start and end with love, even when it seems hard, because ground rules for fighting are going to allow you to stay within the boundaries of love. And if you'll both agree to not go outside them, you'll keep yourselves from saying really hurtful things to each other when you're in those moments of passion and ego. So, ground rules for fighting might look like this. It might be like saying, "Hey, babe, can we take a time out right now?" It might be that moment one of you recognizes that the conversation has turned into a heated argument and that it's time to call that time out and then decide how you both want to handle what a timeout actually looks like. And does that timeout mean that one of you needs to leave the room? Does it mean one of you needs to leave the house for a little bit? Does it mean that you both need to have some cool down time before you revisit the conversation? One of the worst things I've seen couples do is fight in public. If you're arguing about something while you're on your way to a friend's house, it's always best to call a truce until you can both privately voice your concerns to each other versus doing it in front of others. If you feel like things are getting out of hand, you can create a word that lets your partner know that the line feels like it's being crossed. Maybe your word is bananas. So when you and your partner are out in public and what you have, is one of those opportunities to look each other from across the room and say, "Hey, babe, that's bananas." And then that becomes your signal to shut it down and save the conversation for later or save the subject matter for later. It's important to remember that anytime you have a problem, that the frame of mind you should both be going into is that you're both on the same team and that it's you and your partner against the problem versus you against your partner. Because what happens is we start to view them as the enemy when they are not on our team. They are now your nemesis, your frenemy, your person that you're competing with. And this is why so many relationships end up building resentment over time. Instead of remembering that our partner is our ally, we really start treating them like they are the enemy. And then one day we realize we're in bed with our enemy. And this is also the reason why so many relationships end unkindly. We demonize that person, and all that love you started out having, all the feelings, all the butterflies, all the goodness you thought you felt in your heart suddenly goes out the door because you stop seeing them as being your teammate. If any of you played sports or did anything competitive growing up, then there was probably, a team activity where you experienced a time where perhaps one of your teammates didn't do what's best for the entire team. Maybe someone was being a ball hog and the team ended up suffering by not scoring. Or, when that happens, you don't all of a sudden just walk off the court. You or the coach or another teammate probably address it with that teammate to make a correction. Maybe you have to put them on a bench for a little while and they have to sit out, but we don't just oust them. We don't just kick them off the team. And we also don't just leave the team. We recognize that we're all valuable members of a team, but a mistake has been made. And there's got to be room in the relationship for people to make mistakes and for people to make up for those mistakes. And you can take this step, even one step further by creating rules around how you want to make up with each other. This is your relationship operating manual, and you get to decide how you want to run it. And ideally, you want to decide how to run it together on the same team and not as adversaries. Number 3 is ask for what you want. And I know this is a big one. And this one is, if you're bad at asking for what you want in general, it may be even harder for you to do in the context of a relationship, because there could be some old trauma there. There could just be a fear of judgment. There could be so many stories that you have going on about what's going to happen if you ask for what you want. Maybe as a kid, you were shut down when you asked for what you wanted. And so as an adult, you don't feel confident to ask for what you want. Relationships are such a great way to practice the gift of asking for what you want. No one wants to read your mind in the same way that you don't want to have to read anyone else's mind. I have definitely been guilty of being the too easygoing one in a relationship, because I'm not bothered by much. I'm very go with the flow. I don't operate in a world where me or my clients are doing heart surgery. So nothing has a severity to it that's life or death. I'm not finicky about food. Like I said, I'll eat just about anything. I'll try anything. I can listen to just about any kind of music. I'm pretty open-minded about most things. But the problem with being easygoing is that although sometimes it can be a great superpower, it can sometimes also be kryptonite. Because even in my own past relationship, I had to confront my relationship for why it wasn't working. And one of the things that I remember saying to my partner in that situation was how I needed to own my part in being passive about some of the things that I should have never been passive about. For example, he would allow things that bothered him to build up, and then he would get really angry and blow up like a teapot. And in those moments, I was incredibly unresponsive to this kind of behavior, because I don't do teapot blow-ups. And he would read that as me being uncaring or indifferent to his big feelings. Eventually, he would cool off. And after a period of a little bit of silent treatment, things would eventually go back to normal. And that was it. So things sort of would sweep under the rug in some cases. And part of it was me saying, pick your battles. And the other part of it was to not wanting to encourage him to also tea kettle up again. And I'm not saying that I should have yelled back or returned big emotions with my own big emotions. However, I do think there was a benefit, or could have been a benefit, for us in coming back together after a cooling off period to actually talk about what happened. So there's so often times that those disagreements we had were a result of a misunderstanding, and we both would have benefited just so much by being able to express how we were feeling and why we were feeling the way we were feeling. And I think one of the best ways of being able to show up to a partner is to say, the story that I tell myself when you do this is, and then tell them the story that's going on in your head. And when we can phrase it that way, we're not accusing our partner of making us feel a certain way. We're not accusing them of being a thing or a bad person, but instead we're owning our feelings in the situation by telling them, hey, the story I'm telling myself is X, Y, and Z. And I've actually used this approach with both clients and friends, and have found that it's such a cleaner way to communicate that doesn't put anyone on the offensive, and it's added a layer of strength to those relationships, because it created a healthy way of being seen and being heard. I also remember post that relationship having a argument with my ex-partner when we're no longer partners, and using the same methodology. And it was interesting to see it work out so differently. And in that moment, I said, this is what we should have been doing all along. So can the conversation be more comfortable? Maybe, maybe not. But can it be more clear? Can you communicate more clearly? Can you both actually see and hear each other? And can you clear up misunderstandings and get rid of the stories that we tell ourselves about what's happening, when sometimes that's not actually what's happening? We so often go into things with such a bias, and it's really, really important to refocus and reframe and remember that, hey, this is my teammate. What if I clean the slate up and let them actually tell me what's going on here, instead of the story that I'm telling myself? And I think you're going to find that your partner is probably telling some stories too. So really, really important to get that clarity, to get clear with each other and clean it up. Number 2 is be intentional about growing together so that you don't unintentionally grow apart. And I know you guys have heard me say that before. Plan those date nights and take them. Find a couples retreat and stretch yourselves to keep exploring each other. Make time for sex and intimacy and don't confuse one for the other. Intimacy is going to keep that relationship together long after any of the sexual things have faded or may have faded. Doesn't mean those have to fade, but sometimes they tend to taper off. And one of the longevity markers in a relationship is something as simple as always kissing each other hello and goodbye. And when I say that it sounds so simple, it does sound simple, but it's a challenge. And it's a challenge to all of you who are in a relationship right now to give it a try. Do it really intentionally and count how many times that you actually say to yourself that it would be easier just to let it go. So if your guy is walking out the door and you're like, oh, I'm making it an intention for us to kiss hello and goodbye, but oh, he's busy, he's out the door. What if you just took that extra moment to chase after him and give him that kiss goodbye? Like, it's just the intentionality behind it. I think there's an energetics to it, as well as it's such a beautiful expression and something so simple. And it's just one way to create one more positive interaction between you both. And I would also say that, getting that hello kiss or goodbye kiss is really important because you never know when it might be the last time. And finally, my number one thing that I wish I had known before I ever got coupled up is that it takes two. So pick wisely. Find someone who is values aligned in the big things that matter. And big things that matter are things like, do you want children? What happens if you want children and you can't have them in the way that you believe they were going to show up? How often should you have sex? How long do you want to have sex? Are you both interested in monogamy? In monogamish? What do you both believe about money? Do you believe that you should have separate accounts or joint accounts? What kind of purchasing decisions do you want to make together? How do you like to be supported when you're having a bad day? Do you share the same spiritual beliefs? Do you have some of the same holiday rituals? Is family important to you? Is travel important to you? Is eating at the dinner table every night important to you? Every relationship is going to have its quirks and compromises, and it's important to shut out the world sometimes. And I say that meaning shut out the noise of how you think things should or could be, and instead figure out with your partner what you both want and how you plan on building it together. If you have an idea of what you want and they have an idea of what they want, then you can both share those ideas. And then you two can begin to see what magic you get to create together. And don't ever stop creating. So many of us take our teams on quarterly retreats and we do monthly planning and strategy meetings to make sure our businesses are running smoothly. Why don't we put as much time and effort, if not more, into planning for success around our relationships? And if that sounds like too much work for you, then maybe your perfect person, also wants to keep it simple. And to be honest, that's available too. I remember when my sister got married thinking, wow, they have a really 1940-ish style relationship. He handled working, bills, and child discipline. She cooked and cleaned and was a great support structure. Whatever he said goes. He was always served his food first. And she was pretty accepting of whatever he wanted about 99% of the time. And you know what? It worked for them. They were both values aligned when it came to their kids, their religious beliefs, and their roles. like I said, there is literally someone for everyone. And when we start on a strong foundation, we can build anything on top of it and it'll last. Longevity is applauded, but I would challenge that to be lasting quality love with longevity is what should really steal the show. And I don't know about you, but if I had to choose one or the other, I would rather be with a quality partner for a short amount of time than a mediocre partner for a long period of time. And I'm confident that what's available to me is long-lasting love that feels like it's made a home in my heart. So to recap, my top 5 lessons, they are: be curious about each other, create ground rules, that operating manual for your optimal relationship, ask for what you want, be intentional about growing together so you don't unintentionally grow apart, and number 1, be values aligned so that you can build a strong foundation. I would love to hear your comments on today's show, and don't forget to share it with someone you think needs to hear the message too. If you'd like to get in touch with me, just check out the show notes or pop down to the comment section, and you will see all the ways to get the goods. And that is it for today's live show. If you want more, head over to maryd.com. You can grab more Mad Love that's available for you from me. And until next time, may abundance always walk beside you, may joy always go before you, and may love always guide you on your path. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We air live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Brave TV. We hope to see you back next week. For more ways to connect with my guests, content, programs, and retreats, just head over to www.maryd.com and subscribe. That's MARYDEE.com.